Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad everyone has come to be with us tonight at Kingdom Marketplace Connection. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jackie Showers, and I am the sort of the convener of these events, and I'm just excited that you all have come. And I always like to thank God for the love affair that He and I share. It's totally beyond compare. I'm just so excited. I'm always excited, but I'm really excited that you all have made your way in the cold. And some of you all could have been in warm weather, but you decided to come be with us. So thank you for coming to be with us in the cold. But one thing we know, it is Michigan. And because it is Michigan, it means that some days we may have some good weather and some days we may have some cold weather. But today we got some cold weather. And so for those of you who graced the cold for us, I do appreciate it so much. And I'm just excited about all that's happening with the Kingdom Marketplace Connection and everyone that's here. And for those of you who may not know what the Kingdom Marketplace Connection is all about, it is about helping people be able to come out of the four walls of church into the walllessness of the marketplace and to be able to seamlessly integrate spirituality with the reality of the marketplace to move from Sunday into Monday through Saturday. And what we do, we equip, we empower, and we encourage people to become all God envisioned so they can experience what God saw: spiritual abundance, wholeness, and wealth. And everything that we do, that's our whole premise, is to equip, empower, and encourage people to experience what God saw. So some of you come to our 11:59, a minute to midnight marketplace prayer boot camp every Friday night, and we stream on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook every Friday night. Now some people say I cannot stay up to 11:59, and so what I tell them is this: you can do like I do, I take a nap, or you can either just watch it later. So if you watch it later, that's fine as well. And all I ask is if you could go ahead and share it with some other people, so then they can be empowered as well. And we've been doing 11:59 in some form of variation since 2011. So I'm pretty excited about it. I love it. I'm tired afterwards, but I definitely love 11:59. For those of you who don't get our daily emails, our daily inspirations, you want to make sure that that we have your email address. We send out a daily inspiration every single day just to keep you encouraged. And so there's inspiration as well as a prayer. And also, and I probably should do this later, but I'm gonna do this right now. But sometimes I forget, but I'll do it later. For those of you who have not gotten our books, Prayers for Success. Prayers for Success is 366 days of prayers for those that are in the marketplace every single day. So what I find interesting about Prayers for Success is people normally when they read it, the first thing they do is they look for their birthday. They want someone to read their birthday. So if anybody here wants me to read your birthday, and then they say, "Wow, how do you know?" And I say, "There's no way I can know." But their birthday meets them where they are. And so I look at it as God answered my prayer. And my prayer was that when I write the words, that He would anoint my hands so when people read them, they would know that they were words directly from Him to them. And He's been faithful in doing that. Our other book is I Decided. And I wrote I Decided because I kept writing resolutions every year. And I was cleaning out some drawers and I kept running across these resolutions. But they were saying the same thing, but the only difference was the resolutions had not come off the page and became life. So I made a decision that I was not going to write another resolution, but I was going to act out the resolution. And decided stands for diligence, excellence, confidence, integrity, discipline, enthusiasm, and dedication. And those words propelled me to be able to do the things that God has called for me to do. Those of you who remember our Breakout Empowerment and Leadership Conference that we had We will be bringing that back as well. In addition to me doing all the writings that I do, none of these things were happening prior to me making a decision that I was not going to just write resolutions anymore, but I was going to live the resolutions. I was going to allow the resolutions to jump off the page and become a part of my life. And I'm telling you, when you make that decision, it's all the difference in the world. And that's what I decided is all about. Affirmations for success. There are 366 affirmations in order for you to say them every single day and to be successful. Because one of the things we know is that the words that we speak, they become our world. Our words frame our world. So if you begin to speak positive affirmations every single day and allow them to germinate in your spirit, what's going to happen? There's got to be a transformation in your world. If there's not a transformation in your world, then something is wrong. And so that's what I began to do, just writing affirmations, writing a weekly blog every week. And the more I would write, the more confident I became. And just to give you a little history about me, one of my biggest fears was writing. When I took my first journalism class at Wayne State University, and the teacher called me into the back room, and I guess it was about 4 weeks into the class. Now, most people who know me back then, I wasn't really saved, but I was really conceited. So my thought was that he was calling me back there to say, Jackie, you so great. You write so wonderful. So that's what I was prepared to hear. But that's not what I heard. What I heard was he said, I don't understand how you can have such a command of theme, but you don't know grammar, you don't know syntax. So in essence, he was saying, you don't know how to write. And he said, but don't stop writing, go back and get what you need. And I did that. But there was something else I got that night, and it was fear. Fear entered into me. And so I became afraid to write. And it would take me 3 days to write a 3-paragraph letter because I was afraid. Am I doing it right? Am I doing this? So when I finally got saved, I began to realize if I asked God for anything, he would give it to me. And that's when I began to ask God, God, anoint my hands to write the words that you've spoken unto me. And so for a long time, I was writing saying, deliver me of fear. But along the way, there was a shifting. And the shifting happened when I began to say, I am not afraid. I am fearless and I am free. And that's when I began to take authority over my writing, gain the confidence in my writing. And that's why these 3 books exist today. And I have another 4th book in the wing, editing 2 other people's books, all because I had to make a decision and I had to get over the fear. And when the person told me that I couldn't write, my first inclination was, he was a Caucasian instructor. And I was like, he just prejudiced. I'm a young Black girl trying to make it, and he just prejudiced. But you know what? It wasn't until years later I realized this man had done me a favor. Because all along through school, I went to community college. People kept telling me I could write well. But he had the courage enough to say, you don't know what you're doing. And because he told me that, I am the writer that I am today. And so I didn't know where he was, but I just thanked him in the atmosphere and said, thank you for having the courage to let me know I wasn't a good writer. And so we need people like that. We need people that will be able to tell us what we can and cannot do. So that's who I am. My passion is helping people get to where they're supposed to do, where God created them for. That's my passion. I'm passionate about it to the point that some people say, you're just downright mean. And I say, I'm not. I'm not mean, but I'm going to pull the fear out of you until you can pull that fear out of yourself. I'm going to speak to that fear until you can speak to the fear. And then once you're able to speak to the fear, then you will be able to walk in destiny and purpose. And you will be able to embrace who God created you to be. So yes, she'd probably tell you she was downright mean. And I was. And sometimes I am. But it's not a meanness in a bad way. It's a meanness until you can be mean against whatever is preventing you from becoming all God in vision so you can experience what he saw, spiritual abundance, wholeness, and wealth. So I am so excited about tonight. I'm excited about the speaker that we have tonight. And I just want to say this. I want to give a shout out to Linda Ratliff because it was her. She said, "Oh, Jackie, you gotta have Michael come and he has to speak." And she really worked with me in getting Michael here. I knew Michael in a different way. I'm from MMSDC, and so he probably didn't know all this other stuff about me. He just saw me working like a little worker bee at MMSDC, as well as some of the others who are here, who I walked through certification with them and getting certified. And if you're still looking to get certified, I do coaching, and I coach people through the whole certification process in order for you to become certified to be a supplier to larger corporations. So all you have to do, make sure you get my information. I think I ran out of business cards, but if you get this little card here, you'll be able to contact me. My little book promo, you'll be able to contact me. But in spite of it, nevertheless, I'm excited. So I do want to share with you all some of Michael Guthrie's background. And I'm going to tell you, he and I had a chance to have a conversation. And when we had a chance to have a conversation, it was just so enlightening. I was just like, wow. When I finished talking to him, I was pumped. I was ready to go to that next level. So I know once he speaks to each and every one of you all, that you all are going to be in that same place. But I'm telling you, when we come together here at Kingdom Marketplace Connection, we come together because God has placed it inside of each and every one of us. There are those of you who want to be, that are entrepreneurs. There are those of you who want to be entrepreneurs. There are those of you who just want to go to that next level. And that's what it's all about. And so when we are asking the various speakers to come and to address the Kingdom Marketplace Connection, that's what we do. We're looking for speakers that's going to come and not just tell you the how-tos, but also tell you the journey. Because the journey is just as important as the how-tos. So I just want to give you a little bit about Mike Guthrie. He is the co-chairman, CEO, and principal shareholder of Spectra LLC. It is Detroit, Michigan-based holding company. And he has been a lifelong serial entrepreneur. He has been a strong advocate for involving corporate leadership in community and economic development. The Spectra companies include Detroit Chassis. It includes the Detroit Chassis Avon and Detroit Custom Chassis LLC. He is a native of Gary, Indiana, where he was a high school valedictorian. He received an AB from Harvard University in 1972 and a JD from Harvard Law School in 1975. He practiced corporate litigation at an international law firm headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, for several years before joining Johnson Products Company. In 1985, Michael and Carlton partnered to acquire the tool and die and stamping operations of Uptilt Incorporated and Trumark Incorporated in Lansing, Michigan. Their 35-year plus union has been fruitful as they have jointly owned several businesses in sub-assembly and fabrication, metal stamping, tool and die, steel processing, and warehousing, material sequencing, and also product design and engineering services as tier 0 and first and second tier suppliers to the automotive, commercial truck, and transportation industry. He is the past president or board chair of the National Association of Black Automotive Suppliers. He's the National Association of Black Automotive Suppliers Scholarship Fund, the Michigan Council on Vocational Education, Junior Achievement of Mid-Michigan, and the Children's Aid Society of Southeast Michigan. Michael's board and advisory committee memberships have also included the Eli Broad Graduate School of Management of Michigan State University, Comerica Bank, Junior Achievement, and I'm just naming a few, the Single Parent Family Institute of Lansing, the Black Child and Family Institute of Lansing, Children's Aid Society of Southeast Michigan, the Eastside Industrial Council of Detroit, and Community Advisory Board for Davis Aerospace and Technical High School of Detroit. The Guthries and their businesses, he's also in business with his brother, have been recognized by Quality Magazine on the Quality Leadership 100 list, Supplier of the Year by On Wheels Incorporated, the National Minority Business Development Council, and Michigan Manufacturer of the Year by Impressions 5 Museums of Lansing. The Greater Lansing Business Monthly named the Guthries Entrepreneurs of the Year. Ernst & Young named Michael and Carlton Entrepreneurs of the Year for Southeast Michigan. Michael has received the Platinum Award for Lifetime Service from Junior Achievement of Mid-Michigan. And he has been a Junior Achievement Classroom Consultant for over 35 years. He is committed, along with his brother, as advocates for community investment and community leadership. Michael actively mentors college students at Wayne State University, Oakland University, and Michigan State University. And Detroit Chassis has actively funded numerous scholarships and internships through partnerships with Davis Aerospace Technical High School and the National Association of Black Suppliers Scholarship Fund. He and his wife, they are the proud parents of 2 children and 3 grandchildren. So I want you all to help me in welcoming Michael to come to the Kingdom Marketplace Connection.
I can be brief because Jackie stole all my comments. They were so on target, too. Now, this might be a little bit different from what you may have anticipated. I do not plan to stand here and lecture. This is going to be interactive. And I'm going to save plenty of time for you to engage me and each other in questions and dialogue. Now, first, let me give you a caveat. You're not going to agree with everything I say. I don't even know if I agree with it all the time. Don't blame me. Blame Jackie. She invited me. First, I'd like to acknowledge 2 of our longest tenured and highest performing associates from Detroit Chassis. With us is Dr. Linda Ratliff Watkins, who is a manager of customer service, ministry, and you got a couple more in there as well. Linda, why don't you raise your hand so that those people who don't know you already. Also joining us is our VP of Human Resources, Edwina Milligan. Edwina has been with us, both Linda and Edwina, for over 20 years. So thank you for coming out. I like to say my life has been a journey, and it has not been a straight line journey. It has been one fraught with, because I'm hard-headed, knocks from time to time. And I earned those. But one of the most important lessons I learned early is that each time I needed to wake up, I got one of those knocks. Let me walk you through it. I grew up in a family with 5 kids in 7 years. I don't know what my folks were thinking. Yes, I do. They had 5 kids in 7 years. But frequently, there was a cousin, somebody from the church, somebody from the neighborhood, or a friend. There was always 2 or 3 more mouths at the table. But there was still only one chicken. It just got cut up ever more creative ways. So growing up, I always had needs that my family, my dad was a bus driver, mom did housework, she gave music lessons, she sold vacs at Sears Roebuck, but there was just never enough. So I wanted to play Little League baseball, but I didn't have a baseball player. My dad said, son, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to get you a baseball glove. My antennas went up. That was very unlike him. And at 8, I was a very discerning 8-year-old. That's a relative term. Those of you with children understand that. So Dad brought a baseball glove home, and it was plastic and made in Japan. Now, at that time, I'm talking the 50s. At that time, anything made in Japan was cheap, not something you wanted to be proud of. So I promptly lost it on the way to the baseball field. And the only glove that they provided was for catcher. So I said, I want to be a catcher. And I became a catcher. But I needed a baseball glove. Dad said, son, now this is important. He said, I'm not digressing, this is important. Dad said, son, I already gave you one. If you want another one, you got to get it yourself. So I studied on that in my 8-year-old mind. And I needed a job, but I didn't know how to get a job. My next door neighbor, however, was 3 or 4 years older. He had a newspaper route. And in Gary, we're 25 miles from Chicago. He delivered the Chicago morning newspapers, and the papers were dropped off on a corner. But he couldn't get up every day. So he paid me to be there at 5:30 to get the newspapers, bring them back to him, and he would deliver. But I started tagging along, and I learned the route. And so when he was too lazy to deliver the papers, I delivered the papers. And he paid me a little more. And it was very advantageous to him. He thought he was taking advantage of me. My siblings thought he was taking advantage of me. But he was creating a monster. One day, he could not collect. He had a conflict. He asked me if I would collect. I marched right down Mrs. Green's house on 19th Place, 4010. Mrs. Green owed a 75-cent bill. She gave me $1 and she said, keep the change. Ray, I want you to listen to this too. I said, Mrs. Green, why are you giving me 25 cents? Who does that? I mean, who questions it? She said, because you put my paper inside my door, so I don't have to walk out in the grass in my house shoes and get them wet. And you speak to me. You're a nice kid. I said, well, do you think my other customers will give me a tip? She said, why don't you ask them? I asked each one. And predictably, some people say, get the out of my face. But that didn't discourage me. One guy said, you take my dog and you walk him on your route. You bring him back, put him in the fence, and I'll give you an extra $1 a week. Another guy said, if my paper gets here before I leave for work, I'll give you an extra tip. And I started taking advantage of that. I started collecting every week. Now it's 10. But I made more money on tips than I did delivering the newspapers. And my customers liked it. They got, I can't say more, but they got as much enjoyment out of me doing well as I did. So they recruited other customers for me. Now, my route prospered. It grew. Now, Chicago newspapers on Sunday were that thick. And my dad, the superintendent of Sunday school, he had to open up. So he would drive me to get the newspapers because my wagon wasn't going to cut it. And he would sit in the back seat while I delivered papers and he read the sports page. But I had to get done in time for him to open up at Sunday school. So when I didn't, I'd drive him to Sunday school, drop him off, and drive back home. Now I was 11. But my route continued to grow. But this is my journey. And I'm telling you right now, 90% of the seminal lessons I learned as an entrepreneur, I developed first on my paper route. So Dad said, son, I can't take the time and meet my commitments. He says, you might have to make other arrangements. So I thought, I knew where the junkyard was, and I was always a car guy. I went to the junkyard and spent $25 and bought a non-running vehicle. And I talked to the guys there, and they said, why? And I told them. They said, well, let us help you. And they told me which parts I needed, and they helped me get it running. Now, my folks were from the South. My mom didn't want an old piece of car in the driveway that didn't run. She said, when it stops running, it's got to go. But I could only drive it on Sunday to deliver newspapers. But I watched it every week. I listened to the radio. I had an 8-track. How many people know about an 8-track? I'm not old enough to know about 8 tracks. Right. So, but in keeping it running, I learned how to do clutches, brake jobs, tune-ups, pull a radiator in a hot second. I go to junkyard, I buy one part, throw 3 over the fence. Lord, forgive me. I have done wrong. But I learned how to repair cars. And so I started repairing cars. Now, I didn't have time for the paper route anymore because now I'm 12. And I got bussed out as part of Gary's integration effort to a school across town, across hostile territory. I'm in middle school, and I started to play sports. There was no transportation. So Dad said, son, he was a notorious cheapskate. But one thing he was generous about was that car. He said, son, I'm going to let you drive the car to school, but you got to come straight home after practice. Now, all my other buddies from the neighborhood who were also bussed out needed transportation. 25 cents, round trip. I could get 9, 10 guys in there. And the floorboard had a hole in the back seat. They put their foot down when I braked the skid. It was a lot of fun. But that helped me keep, because gas was 12 cents a gallon at Clark. We thought they put water in it to cheapen it, but that was part of that entrepreneurial spirit of ingenuity. One door closes, another opens. Now, when I was 14, I did something that every 14-year-old, no matter how well adjusted, educated, socialized, spiritualized, does. They make a wrong decision. Melvin Betts, God rest his soul, I should have did away with him then. I said, Mike, over at Patch Park Pavilion, a lot of people get together and they'll play music, and we could put something on your 8-track, talk to some girls. I said, but Melvin, that's not on my way home. He said, but we could just stop by there and see what's happening. I said, Melvin, come on, Mike, come on, man. Nobody's gonna know. We'll be right back. So by then I had a 55 Chevy. We drove over to Patch Park. Trying to be cool, I was going to spin the tires, and I put it in reverse instead of first gear. And I backed into a brand new 65 Bonneville. You know how they would come out in the summer before? Brand new. And the fellow wanted to fight. And I said, boy, I got money saved up. I can fix it. He said, are you that Guthrie kid? I said, well, yeah. He said, I'm going to call your dad. I said, no, call the cops. I felt it was safer. I had to sell that car. Dad required me to sell it that night, or it would belong to him. For whatever I could get cash money, $25 is what I got. I blame Melvin for the next 50 years for that misfortune. But you know what? It was my choice. It was my choice, and I was accountable for it. But 3 takeaways I took from that. One is, if you commit to go above and beyond to favor your customers, they will favor you. They will become vested in your success. Secondly, I did not miss a day being there at 5:30 to get those newspapers. You got to show up. You have to show up on time. You must. And the third one was, on that path, it is not straight line. All I saw was line of sight. I want to build my paper out, but that wasn't my destination. That was a milestone, a byway, because then that led me to fixing, we call it fixing up cars, but repairing cars for myself and other people. And that led me to buying and selling cars. So in my late 20s, I was buying and selling Ferraris. I couldn't afford to drive because I couldn't afford the insurance. There were investments. And that led me to accumulating the capital to buy the first company. The paper route. It wasn't a direct line. It was a jagged line. Now, there were other side trips along the way. I practiced law for several years. I did a lot of First Amendment law. I got appointed to represent the American Nazi Party and their efforts to march in Skokie, Illinois. First Amendment lawsuit. We won that. Did several civil rights, First Amendment assembly lawsuits. We won those. But then I got appointed to represent a client, Unarco Industries, that had been Union Asbestos and Rubber Company from 1912 to 1954. I didn't know that. They had one case alleging asbestos exposure. 2 years later, I had 6,000. That's all I did. 6,000 cases nationally. I did the direct and cross-examination of registered medical witnesses. And our strategy was to stall, because in most states, after the individual dies, you cannot collect pain and suffering. That's where the big money is. It's a wrongful, Tennessee, it's a $250,000 wrongful death rate. That's the muchest the heirs can collect. So my job was to stall and then settle with the heirs. And I was very good at it. However, it was spiritually dead. That wasn't how I saw myself. People said, oh, Mike, my office was on the 80th floor of the Sears Tower. 200-man law firm. I was the only black lawyer, and I used that because it got me a lot of attention. It's hard to get attention when there's 200 lawyers. But when you look and you do a good job, people see. And I used that. I worked 80 hours a week. My wife and I were living in a 13-room house on the lakefront. And by then, I did have that for a while. I bought it from Johnny Carson. And people said, Mike, you got it made. I hated my life. And one day I walked in and to give myself a pep talk to go to work, I said, Mike, you can't do this anymore. And I went to my mentor and said, Harold, I can't do this anymore. He said, Mike, he said, you're almost there. He said, look at me. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you'll be just like me. That's sealed. Harold had been married 3 times. He smoked 3 packs of cigarette a day. His kids didn't talk to him. He wore a suit 7 days a week because he went to the office. And all he had was a lot of money. But you know what? That wasn't enough. Not enough in quantity, enough in spirit. And I decided at that moment that it was important, not just what I did, but how I did it. That was important. Now, I will digress here for a minute, because coming up, I thought I was pretty smart. I think I was the smartest kid in the 3 houses next to the playground. So I definitely was the smartest kid in special ed. But I had an aha moment. Staff has heard me talk about aha moments, because I had the same math teacher for 4 years of high school, the same English teacher for 3 years of high school. And they gave me a custom education because they pushed me. They demanded more, just like your guy in the community college. They didn't accept doing a little better than everybody else. They wanted as much as I could give, and they saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they gave me work 12 months a year and paid for me to take college classes in high school. I was an athlete. That's how I defined myself, as an athlete, not as a scholar. And I didn't realize that I had a great education until I had the good fortune to go to Harvard. And I was going to major in math, so I took Calculus 1. But I had done that in the 10th grade. So I moved to Calculus 2. Oh, that was pretty easy too. So I moved to Calculus 3. Now it became more challenging. But I thought, I can hold my own with these people. So I came home at Thanksgiving, and I was feeling pretty cocky. You thought you were conceited. Woo! I told you this is hard hit. Did I mention that? I was feeling pretty cocky. I had a new Japanese, the Japanese was better by now, a digital watch with a timer. And I cooked myself a meal. I had a banquet TV dinner, the burrito, because it was 13 ounces. And I put that in the stove. I put the timer on the stove. I looked at my watch. I set the timer. I think it was like 20 minutes. And I laid down on the couch and was watching TV. So my mother came home and she said, "Son, there's something burning." I said, "No, Mom. There's nobody here but me. Nothing's burning." She said, "Son, I smell something burning." I said, "Well, no, Mom. I have a TV dinner in the oven, but I still got 8 minutes to go." And my watch, see, digital watch, Mom, it's going to tell me when it's ready. She went in the kitchen, opened the stove, smoke billows out. My watch is working. I had neglected to take the TV dinner out of the box. Mom said, "Son, I didn't go to college. I don't have the book learning. But I got enough sense that when my nose tells me something is burning, to get off the couch and go see what it is." You know what? That was one of those things that changed my life. It really was. Because what I learned was that no matter how much you know, no matter how much intelligence, no matter how much knowledge and mastery of trivia and detail, what matters is how you put it together and what you do with it. And in my career as a manager, and Carlton and I, Jackie, we've owned 16 companies together and several individually. In my career as a manager, the most talented, knowledgeable, especially engineering, we got any engineers in here, and software guys, did not always make the most effective, high-performing employee, because it's what you do in putting it together. So I stepped back and I decided to take a closer look at myself. But I had a lot of room to go. I had a lot of ground to make up. Because I still thought, okay, I fell short here and there. But I still got a lot going on. I'm not proud of the guy I was then. But God spoke to me. I played college football. I was a weightlifter and pretty buff. And I was slow dancing with my girlfriend. And we were hugged up and she said, "One side of your neck is a little larger than the other." I said, "Well, I'm going to work on that." She said, "No, you should have it looked at." And she bugged me. And finally I went to the University of Health Services. He took some x-rays and he said, "Well, son," he said, "you got a tumor." Now, all the things I had done, I had never been hurt. I wasn't even born in a hospital. I had never had a head-on collision, went through a windshield, had just a tiny cut on my eyebrow. I thought I was bulletproof. I said, oh, okay, then we'll just take it out. But it turns out it was malignant throat cancer. And they wanted to take out my vocal cords. So no, can't take out my vocal. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. I said, well, it may come back. I've had 5 bouts. But each time I had to face my mortality, it was a reminder. It was a reminder. Son, who are you? What are you doing with your gifts that I have given you? It's not about you. It's about what you can do with and through others. That sustains me. That girlfriend became my wife of 47 years. And best thing that could have happened to me. Because when I think of the girls I could have, they probably say the same thing. But the choices that were provided to me, I started to own up to. When I decided to walk away from the law firm and the wealth and the stature and the livelihood that it provided, I felt a huge sense of relief. And I started another journey. That door closed, another door opened in search of meaning for myself. Now, I started working for Johnson Products Company, hair care and cosmetic manufacturer, Afro Sheen. You remember those? But my first job for them was Johnson Products Company owned the Soul Train program. And Don Cornelius, the host, wanted to buy it. So Mr. Johnson came to the law firm where I was working, and because he wanted someone with experience in handling that kind of media law. Now, there was only one black guy in the whole law firm. And when he came to the law firm, because Mr. Johnson, he was the first black entrepreneur who took the company public back in 1969. I got this frantic phone call. Mike, we need you on the 82nd floor. Quick, I walked in the room, and I burst out laughing. And he burst out laughing. And I worked on that for him, but when I walked away from that job, my intent was to go out on my own. Mr. Johnson approached me and said, Mike, he said, why don't you come work for me? He said, I don't know if I can afford you, but I'll let you work for me and have your own practice. And that was a very generous offer, and that's what I did until he fired me. Did I tell you I was hard-headed? I fired a relative of Mr. Johnson, a close relative. And I had the furniture moved out of his office and the locks changed on the building. So he couldn't get in. And Mr. Johnson was in Paris on vacation. So he could not charter a plane. Now, he could not get a flight fast enough. So he chartered a plane to fly from Paris back to Chicago. And he said, he called me into the office, and we had armed security because we had the biggest hair care lab outside of Revlon in the industry. So we had a lot of patents, and security was at the door with the box. And he walked me to the balcony, and I was leaning back, and he was leaning forward. I didn't want him to make a mistake and throw me over. But he said, whose name is on the sign? I said, it's your name. He said, what's my name, son? I said, George Johnson. He said, before you make a call like that, make sure your name is on the sign. Ding, 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 ding. Now, again, Mr. Johnson was living a good life. He had 3 planes, a 96-foot yacht with a full-time crew in Chicago in the summer, Ocho Rios in the winter. He had a villa in Jamaica. He had a flat in London. He had a flat in Paris. He had 2 farms, and he owned several thousand acres in Florida that nobody wanted until Disney came along. And I could use all of it, but it wasn't enough. I wanted excellence. I wanted commitment and passion. But I couldn't do it in somebody else's company. So he said, how much time do you need? And I know he thought I needed half an hour. I said, I need 6 months. He said, to do what? I said, to put my name on a sign. And he thought for a minute. He had a way of raising that one eyebrow, like The Rock can do. I can't do it. Charles, can you do it? I can't do it. He raised that eyebrow. He said, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. You work for me. No, he said, you take 6 months, buy a business. But if you don't, you agree to work for me for 5 years and do whatever the hell I tell you to do. And he extended his arm. I did one of these numbers. And he raised that eyebrow. And we shook hands. And 5 months and 22 days later, Carlton and I bought a tool and die business and a bumper business in Lansing, Michigan. That door closed. Another one opened. Now, this is going to be in my book. We paid $7.5 million for it. Every penny we had. It was a profitable business. And we got a contract from Oldsmobile to give us a year to address the quality issues. That's why it was for sale. But GM went through the big Olds Cadillac reorganization, and responsibility for the parts moved from Lansing to Flint. And in Flint, the buyer says, I've got 2 guys from Chicago outside the business, the plant with a history of quality issues. I don't need them. I'm transferring the business. And he moved 70% of our business. So we went from buying a business that had about $2 million pre-tax earnings to losing $400,000 a month. We were bankrupt. The good part was our creditors didn't know it. So the steel companies kept shipping us steel, and we weren't paying. And after about 90 days, they said, hey, did we miss your check? We said, no, there is a problem. We called all of our creditors together, hotel ballroom, and said, we cannot afford to pay you, but we have a plan. We're going to turn this business around, but we need 3 years. And we need you to put the money we owe you in a note, and we'll pay you back in 5 years. And we want you to continue extending credit. But since we don't have any sales, it won't be much credit. And they said, are you crazy? Carlton and I had 2 chairs on the stage. And it was an uproar. They said, we want to talk to your advisors. We want to talk to your lawyers and your accountants. We're going to put you in bankruptcy. So I waited. I said, we are our advisors. We are our counsel. And frankly, I think we have you outnumbered. That's when it hit the fan. But they said, you guys leave the room. We want to talk without you. 2 individuals, one with Republic Steel, one with U.S. Steel, decided we had the audacity that they were willing to invest in us. They bought the debt of all the little guys and got the other 3 steel makers to agree to keep us in business. We should have been bankrupt. We should have been. Somebody else invested in us because they liked what we were doing. So I'm going to take you through 2 more steps, and then I'm opening up questions. So we didn't have any much opportunity with General Motors. We could have sued them, but we thought that's a bad look, especially for me as an attorney, to come in from outside the industry and then 6 months later sue your biggest customer, well, our only customer. So we went to see Ford Motor Company. We talked to a purchasing manager. We asked for an opportunity to quote. He said, I already have too many people doing what you do. I don't need another company like yours. So Carlton said, well, can you introduce us to someone at the Ford Foundation? He said, why? He said, well, we started an organization called the Single Parent Family Institute. which is designed to take single parents with a history of dependency to self-sufficiency. And we'd like to apply for a grant. He said, well, I grew up in a single parent family. Tell me more. That purchasing manager was Carlos Mazur, who later became worldwide VP of purchasing and then president of the Americas. And a year later, we got the largest contract Ford had ever given a minority supplier. That saved us. That grew us. Somebody else. Somebody else. Now, eventually, we decided to put a proposal in front of Ford to build a plant in Detroit, to build an RV, a motorhome chassis that was being built in Mexico. We wanted to build it in Detroit. Now, at that time, manufacturing was all going to Mexico. So when we did that, we went to the UAW and said, we want to be union. They said, what? Yeah, we want to be union. We'll invite you into the plant, but we want a novel collective bargaining agreement based on skill, ability, and they agreed to do that. We built the plant, we went to the state, and Governor Engler said, we'll give you economic development assistance, but you have to take everybody we refer from whatever source. We said, we'll do it. So we had people who were homeless, because whoever they referred, they took them off public assistance, took away their benefits. We had people coming to work with their babies in the car. It was just a zoo. And when it was there, I became a truant officer. If you didn't show up, I got a list. I'd go knock on your door. If you didn't have pit bull, I'd go around the back and look in the window and knock on the window. So we need you to come to work. We hired 3 social workers full-time to work within our company. Now I'm getting to the close here, and you're going to see the link. We had 35% absenteeism. It was a zoo. Everybody was looking for us to fail, and the company in Mexico, who was running concurrently with us, was looking and waiting for us to crash and burn so they could consolidate their hold on the business. We hired a safety consultant because people were milking the work comp. A fellow by the name of Al Jemison. And Al did a great job. He was there about 90 days. I think we had a 90-day contract. And for about a month afterward, I saw Al around the plant. So I said, Al, come here. I said, did we renew your contract? Al said, well, as a matter of fact, you did. I said, Al, I don't think so, because I would have had to sign it. He said, well, the man upstairs renewed. I said, Al, we're on one level here. We're bedside. And I'm in the corner office. He said, the man upstairs, son. I said, Al, are you a minister? He said, I am. And this is my ministry. Your people need me. I said, so you come to work every day? I said, who pays you? He said, the man upstairs. I said, well, how can I help? He said, well, if I had a radio and a computer and someplace private. So I got that. And Al kept coming to work. And after about 3 or 4 months, I was so embarrassed. Put him on the payroll. But I didn't know it was okay to put a minister on the payroll. You know, first we had social workers on the payroll. Now we got a minister on, and the bank is saying, because, you know, they're looking very closely. You know, what's going on over there? But Al started a prayer service, open to everyone, that they had outside. And there was no room inside to do it. Then we got a trailer. We said, Al, you could use the trailer. And then Al got sick and passed away. And the ironic thing was that he had been sick and he thought he was going to be released. He left a message on my voicemail the day before he passed that I didn't get until 3 days after he passed. And he said, young man, he said, I'm coming back because your people need me. He said, Just give me a minute. I'll be there. And Al did not come. So we talked to other ministers, different employees, suggested people, but nothing clicked. So Carlton and I decided we needed an executive assistant. And so we interviewed, and we have a rule, you got to interview 3 people, but we interviewed the first young lady, and she was so amazing. We said, okay, but we need to interview at least one more person. We're trying to set an example, 3 people. And so now, after that person, no, we're going to select. And that turned out to be Linda Ratliff Watkins. Linda came in, and I noticed Linda was talking to people. And people would be around her desk, and she'd be huddled over on the side. And I said, Linda, are you a minister? She said, well, why, yes, I am. God just wants us to have a person, a believer in our plan. Now, I had done stuff because I'm a believer. I'm a saved person. I said, okay, we're going to do this differently. In a plant, every 3rd word is profanity. Sometimes every 2nd. I said, no profanity. Sent the plant manager home for 2 weeks without pay for profanity. When we interview people, we interview them, and I want to know what's important to you in your life. I do a whole different kind of interview. I don't want to know, what are your conflict and communication skills, and I want to know what's important to you. Do you have a personal mission statement? And if you don't, let's do one right now. Let's pick 4 key words. What's important to you? Because I want to know if what's important to you is aligned and congruent with what's important to us. And we don't say you have to be a Christian. I want to know what you care about. But as it happens, you start to collect people who also believe. Now, I've been challenged by that most recently because we've hired a lot of Bangladeshi. And they don't believe as we do, but they pray. They pray. What we have found is that time and time again, our customers identify with us. They want to see us successful to the point that they go above and beyond to ensure that we do. In 2012, Ford negotiated with the union. The union, they had a lot of people laid off. They agreed to give the union the right to identify all work done outside and insource. First thing they identified was us, because what we do, we're the only company in North America that operates as an OEM assembly plant, and we're privately owned. We're the only, not the only minority company, we're the only company. What we do, the OEMs do themselves. So Ford gave us a year's notice. They said, we're going to insource this product, and we're 100% for it. We're going to be out of business. But every single one of our customers got together, flew and drove to Dearborn and said, if you do that, we will take all of our business, we will put Detroit Chassis in business, and we have a building, and we'll give them guaranteed contracts, and we will co-sign a loan. That's what they did to keep us in business. Isn't that amazing? Who's ever heard of anything like that? But it wasn't just because they liked our pretty faces. It's because they liked what they saw when they came to our company. People directed, working hard, and they saw a community of believers. So I can't tell you how many times I can say I'm standing here today as a CEO of a company that would not exist but for those believers. A door closes, another opens. That has been the story of my life. And there's a beginning, starts with the birth trauma. There's an end that starts with the transition. Everything else is the in-between. what I'd like for you to take away is that do what matters to you. Embrace who you are. But in order to do that, you have to know who you are. Challenge yourself by creating your own personal mission statement. I'll tell you what mine is. I strive for excellence in all things. As a man of God, a husband, a father, a citizen, and I strive to establish a legacy worthy for others to follow. Legacy is important to me. All those people who invested in me when I was 8 and helped me build that paper out, those teachers, at every inflection point during my life, somebody else was there. How many of you have seen that thing you see it in bathrooms sometimes, footsteps in the sand?
Yeah.
He was there.
He was there.
He was there. So we are conduits. Community development, economic development, spiritual development, we are tools. And I thank God for the privilege of having that role, providing the means to do so, and being surrounded by people who believe just as strongly, if not more so, than I. So if you don't have a personal mission statement, think about it. If you are not in touch with yourself, I recommend, make a note of this, www.16personalities.com. 25 questions. You'd be amazed at the insights that can be developed, and challenge those people close to you. Say, is this an accurate depiction? What do I think is real and what isn't? And you know what it said for me? It said I'm a logician, but with a strong empathetic piece. But very unusually for logicians, I'm 96% assertive. And assertive in that I know what I want, and I don't go back and re-question it unless there's a reason to do so. I make a decision and I stick with it. And I shared it with my wife. And you know what she said? She said, did you pay for this? Because you could have just given the money to me. But I'd have told you. She's been telling me all the time. But you know what? It becomes a mirror. And everything is not absolutely on target. But it starts the wheels turning. Because if you remember the song of the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror, YouTube it, Google it, look at the words. It's the man or woman in the mirror who is the most important thing in responding to God's call. That's each of us. Embrace it. Do we have time for a few questions?
Yeah.
I know somebody's got something. Okay, I'll ask one. Hey, Mom. What was the biggest mistake you made in your business career? Well, I'm glad you asked that question because it's usually the same one. I don't know. I don't like to give up on a person. I don't like to give up on a project. Sometimes I should. Really. Sometimes I should. All our businesses didn't work out. And there were several. I wish I had made the decision before. But you know what? I didn't make it purely on economic, business economics. I wanted to take care of the people. And I was willing to take some extra risk. But you know what? That is a risk. In dealing with projects, people, you have to know when to say yes and when to say no. I have one more question. Hey, Mike, how do you assemble capital? That is a very perceptive question. Every entrepreneur has a challenge of assembling capital. But let me tell you a secret that you probably already know and don't realize you know it. Your biggest capital is your time. If you have time, you have capital. The challenge is, how do you add value to that time? How do you add value to that time so that it is more valuable to you and your customers? That's what you got to figure out. And time is finite. We can't take a 24-hour day and make it 28 hours. I thought I could manage my time by just working harder. I was 50 before I took 2 weeks of vacation in 1 year. Because I always had 2 or 3 things going at the same time. If I took a vacation for one, that gave me time to do the others. And I thought I was doing it for the right reasons. I was on 6 or 7 boards. I was running from pillar to post. And I read Stephen Covey's book, First Thing First, that he wrote to help people prioritize how they spend their time. And it starts with an exercise. It says, what are the things that are important to you? My spiritual health, my physical health, my family, da-da. Let's track how you spend your time. Does it match? It didn't match. It didn't match. So what are you going to do? So I resigned from the Comerica board. They paid money too. It's not all about the money, though, is it? I stayed with Junior Achievement because I liked it. But I decided I needed to align how I spent my time and make those choices. It had to be closer to the things that were truly important to me, or they weren't truly important to me. That's the thing. How you spend your time, how you add value to your time. And I've got a whole nother speech about how you add value. And you know what? We'll talk about that another time. But that is your biggest challenge. And the busier you get, the bigger that challenge will be, because you'll be balancing. And there are opportunity costs and trade-offs. You can't do it all, but working with and through other people, you can do more. And some things you shouldn't be doing. I sold a boat. The dog died, I didn't replace him. I'm a model train collector, I'm a muscle car guy, love sports cars, I still do a little bit there. I golf, I fish, I hunt. Well, I used to, now I just golf. I used to play tennis 5 times a week with my wife until I started playing golf. You'd have thought I was having a thing. So where are you going? Oh, nowhere, I'm just going for a ride. You have those clubs in the trunk, don't you? Oh, no, I'm just clearing my head, getting some air. I know you're going to the range. Now she plays golf. Any questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So when you finally had your aha moment, did you advance on at that moment, or did it take you a minute to come to realize that you needed to change something?
It took a minute. But it kept coming back to me. I kept wrestling with it. You know, when you need to do something and you just don't want to, you have to wrestle with it. And frankly, it was my second bout with cancer where I decided to change my life, and it stuck. Because one time, lightning strikes somebody, right? I thought, okay, strike me, I'm good now. You know, I always wanted to be Catholic if I could go to confession on Saturday and then try to get through the week. But when you're Baptist, you know, that don't work. You can burn in hell for a lifetime. You got to keep your stuff tight. You got a question?
Yes, sir. Traditional business practices tell us that we have to hustle and grind for everything that we need to do. Right? But those of us who are like kingdom-minded business owners, we know that we can accomplish more in God's rest. So how do you, as somebody who's been in business for decades, how do you determine when it's like when you're hustling and grinding for it versus when you are in God's rest?
It's never an absolute equilibrium. God works through us, and He rewards our endeavor. And it may be when He's placing that burden in front of you, that rock to pound, that is the path that He wants you to take. You have to discern. And to do that, you have to pray. you have to contemplate. But it's a dynamic imbalance. The pendulum swings back and forth. And it's not so important that you center it. What's important is you understand the outer boundaries so that when you're getting too far, I rationalized mine. I was doing it for my family. I was doing it for my employees. I was doing it for everybody else. But still, I was doing it. And I had to decide, is this aligned with my real mission and the things that are important to me? And the answer was no. So you got to find where your boundaries are, and you got to find within that. There's room to move back and forth. I wish I could give you a better answer, but each of us has to wrestle with that. Charles?
When is that book coming out?
Linda's been bugging me about that. Actually, I hired an editor, and we worked on the chapter headings, and I've done hours and hours of interviews. But you know, it scares me. If I tell the truth, there are consequences. Because my experiences may be interesting. Somebody else may be humiliating, embarrassing, or offensive. But I am still working on it, and I'm not going to let it go. But it will be coming out, and you will hear about it, because it will be on YouTube. I will have a podcast, and I'm going to talk to Jackie about how to promote it. Yes, yes.
You talked a little bit about board membership. You have several board appointments, some paid, some not. What would you recommend for somebody who's looking to get into some type of board position?
Okay, there are organizations that help match make people who are interested in board positions. And I don't know how well they work, but I would suggest that networking, volunteerism, because on community boards, you meet people who are on other boards. And when people see you as a prospect, and don't be bashful about letting it be known, it's through those good works and through that networking that you become aware of opportunities. Doors open, but it does require a focused approach. But let me give you a caveat though. We talked about time management. Boards can become time sinks because they need resources, especially not-for-profit boards. They absolutely need resources. So you have to decide what you can do in good faith and what you can do that's not at the expense of the other things you do. So don't trade in quantity. Identify one or two activities to which you can give a creditable amount of time and add value. Okay? There's another young lady back.
Hi, my question is, when you're beginning to scale, your business is scaling, how do you ensure that your foundation grows with the business? What are some key pointers that, maybe one key pointer that you can throw out here for?
Okay, now that is the challenge that is supreme for every business, successful or not. And we're starting with that now. We are talking to a startup that has developed a commercial EV truck product. And they are seeking 9 figures of investment from investment bankers. I'm going to try to be very broad here so that I don't disclose any confidential information. But their investment bankers, their private equity groups, interviewed us. They said they had studied every EV startup in the market. And the biggest problem all of them faced was not technology, not customers, it was scaling. Even Tesla, Rivian, Lordstown, it was scaling. Now, I've been a part of a lot of transactions, been part of a lot of business plans. I cannot tell you one, and then I'm going to ask you a question, that met their original projections. I can't tell you one. Most of them, especially startups, the projections aren't based on a crystal ball, they're based on hopes and aspirations. But they spend based on projections without having the capital to back it up. So two things. One is you must always have capital in reserve. And the worst time to get it is when you really need it. It's when it's most expensive and it's not available. But second, you must be conservative and know your cash burn. That is, however much cash you have to know based on how you have to spend it, how much time that buys you. And you have to structure your marketing plan, your execution plan to fit within that cash burn. And if you don't have the reserves, it's not a good deal going in. Otherwise, it's like gambling. Because you can be very successful. Elon Musk came to us in 2001 and wanted us to build a chassis for an electric roadster. But he had no money.
Right.
He said, I want you to buy all the parts. And I want you to assemble it. And then when I sell it, I want to order it from you. And then I'll pay you 90 days later. Does that sound like a good deal?
No.
That guy was crazy. Who knew? He said, I can't afford to pay you, but I could give you stock. Who knew? But he went through several rounds of financing, and he would not have made it except you and I bailed him out through government loan guarantees to the tune of $600 million. Now, sometimes it's a good investment. It's a good investment for GM and Chrysler to get bailed out by the government. Government made money, but we're not the government. And when it's our capital, we have to make sure that we're scaling within the limits of our capital and that we can be aspirational, but we've got to be cold-hearted, logical, and mean. And your people, they will want to reach for the sky. They will want to do more because they're focused on, if it all works out, this will be wonderful. But we, those of us who provide the working capital, have to always be cognizant of the fact that it has to stretch. Carlton and I would not have made it if we didn't have working wives, because it was over almost 4 years before we could take salary. And they soldiered on. And we shared a one-bedroom apartment, and one bedroom upstairs, and one in the basement. We flipped the coin. I lost. I was in the basement. That just wasn't right. But we survived. We survived. And the only reason we survived was for the reasons that I mentioned to you before. That was an excellent question. Yes.
So, in the midst of those closed door transitional moments, beyond prayer, well, alongside with prayer, what else did you do for your mental health aspect to keep, to keep your mental health intact during those transitional moments? The disappointment, in life, sometimes it can be heavy for any of us, with this experience.
It is. That's a very profound question too. And I learned more from going through my personality assessment about why I made the decisions I did. One of the characteristics of me, and I learned this long ago, is if I get knocked down, I'm getting up. If I get knocked down 10 times, I'm getting up 11 because I'm stubborn. But, and this is a real but, I am relentlessly forward looking. I want to focus my energy not on what happened to me before, but what am I doing next? What is my reaction plan? And that energizes me. But I do have 3 tactics. I'm an early riser. I would get up 5 or 5:30 in the morning and walk in the woods because the home I lived in was surrounded by woods and I had trails. And that was my reflection time. We didn't have cell phones then. It was me and the dog. And that was my thought time where I found peace and where I got energized by saying, I've got a plan for the day. And I still wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And my first thought is, thank you, Lord, for giving me one more day. Because I didn't always know I had enough. And I wanted to learn how to live in the moment. But I love that reflection time. And even if you take 20 minutes during the day, I close my door. And if somebody knocks on the door, I don't always answer it if it's my reflection time. We each must have something, the tools, multiple tools that work for us. Reflection is mine. The other is reading. I have an active imagination. And sometimes I read things and I get confused about whether I've actually been there when I talk about it later. Really, it's that vivid. It's especially reading about pioneering times, Africa. Man, it gets so vivid, but that's my escape. But you cannot escape as a means of avoiding reality. It has to be a respite from reality and then re-engage. So you got to find what works for you. And when I interview people, I ask them that question. I say, what do you do for stress relief? How do you know when you are stressed? What's amazing is so many people say, I know when I'm stressed. I used to think I knew. And I came home and told my family that one time, they cracked up. I thought when I came in the door, I got my face fixed right, no matter how bad the day was, phone in my pocket. They said, Dad, you gotta be kidding. We all know. Even the dog knew. We don't know as much about our stress levels as those people who work with us. And Edwina is my conscience. Other people are scared to say things to me. I don't know why, I'm a nice guy. And they tell her, and then she tells me. Because she doesn't care if I get upset about it. But you know what? We all need to have someone who will be candid, who will sit down with us and tell us things we may not want to hear. Then, if we have the comfort of that, we don't permit ourselves to fool ourselves.
Right.
So there was a time I commuted from West Palm Beach. I got a 7 o'clock flight. I'd have been gone tonight. But Jackie and Linda convinced me this is an opportunity. And it is. And I'm so glad that I am. But I came in one Monday morning and it was 80 degrees and the palm trees were waving. And I walked on the jetway. Woo! It was rough and it was, gray. And I went into the office and Wina came in, all 5'2". She says, are you going to have an attitude today? And you know what? I said, yes, I am. I am. But I didn't realize, I thought I was hiding it from the staff. But they knew. They could see. So we each must find our coping mechanisms. It starts with recognizing that there is stress. And again, if you go through the 16 personalities, I highly recommend, it's free, by the way. You can pay for really in-depth stuff that's very interesting, but the free 16personalities.com. The free part gives you enough to develop some insights and you can say, I see this, don't see that, but now I understand how I interact with other people, with other personalities. It's very insightful. Yes.
Last question.
Yeah. Last question.
Last question. So you were talking about your employees. You tell us some stories about your employees. What kind of initiatives have you guys implemented to invest in their professional and their leadership development?
Okay, that's a really good question. Not enough. We've done all the traditional things. We've allied with Michigan Manufacturing Technology Council, MMTC, AMA. We brought in outside coaches, brought in leadership coaches. In fact, That was very insightful. A PhD in organizational psychology to work with our executive team, executive coaches. We don't do a lot of educational tuition reimbursement because while that may be valuable for creating degree and certificate granting, it's not as closely aligned with our business necessarily. So what we want to do is those things that have a mutual benefit that the associate can use in their current job, prepare for their next job in our business. For example, I discovered that we paid for a guy to go to truck driving school, and he worked on the plant floor. He got a job as a truck driver. He was very thankful, but it wasn't the highest return in that investment. So that is always a challenge. Now, what we also do is we mentor. We have what we call a 30, 60, 90-day program for every new associate coming in that sits down with the senior team, and in 30 days, it's fresh eyes, swap, look at the important things they're focused on, right on through 90 days, then developing your plan. But as part of our performance feedback system, it's a kind of a closed loop system. You embrace goals and objectives, and then you have touch points, and then you have feedback on that, and then that is aligned and fed into your next goals and objectives. And it's between you and your manager to determine what kind of additional development you would need. Unfortunately, I think it ought to be 90% the individual themselves and 10% the managers. Unfortunately, I think most people look at it the reverse. They think that the management team should take the initiative in developing people. Well, I don't think we're the best at that. Not in, because we don't know as well as you do how it fits into the directions you want to take, the paths that you want to take, and how you want to leverage that to whichever direction, which may not be at Detroit Chassis. And frankly, I've counseled people. They've come to me and said, Mike, I have an opportunity, and I want to talk to you about it. And I encourage them to do that because I want to give them my candid and honest advice about what's best for them. And sometimes it's to take that opportunity. And in fact, I help them structure it to make it as much as it can be for them. But each individual must, in the first instance, assume responsibility for their own development and then market yourself to the company so that we can see how it's a win-win scenario for us to invest. And that we have done. We don't do it enough, especially after COVID and especially after 2008. We went in a cycle. We did a lot before that. 2008, we reduced from, 350 to 24 in the space of 3 months. And during COVID, I mean, it was terrible. We were down as much as 10, 12 weeks at a time, even though we were a critical, essential provider. So in those times, it was survival mode. And it was, how do we get through the next payroll? And I'll tell you, sometimes that's what it is. I told you I bought a Ferrari from Johnny Carson. I still have it. I've owned it 40 years. I sold it twice to make payroll. So I can sell it on the line, but with an option to buy it back. And you know what? I didn't know any other way of getting the money in the bank on Wednesday, so checks were clear on Thursday. It's that tough sometimes. Okay, I know I've taken way too much time. Thank you very much. You've asked some great questions, and I thank you for the opportunity to share a portion of my journey with you. The book is coming out.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was just awesome. I was sitting over there, it's like, whoa, this is just awesome. And I know those of you that are here, you all felt the same way as well. But I'm telling you, what I love about the Kingdom Marketplace Connections, beginning from the first one we had back in May, on May 19th, my birthday. Everybody knows I like to say my birthday. But, but the speakers have just been phenomenal, and the information that they have given, it's information not just for you to say, I'm taking my business to the next level, or even I'm going to go to the next level, but it's been inspiration that say, I'm going to the next level, that I'm going to do an introspective analysis of myself to make sure I'm in alignment. And so as Mike was talking, one of the things that kept coming to me was he kept saying he had to have those aha moments. And sometimes we do get so caught up in the inertia of the busyness of busyness that we lose sight that we have to have that time. And I think it was you who asked a question about finding that sort of that respite. And speaking of respite, Trina Campbell back there, she will be having a retreat in January. What are the dates, Trina? January 21st through 23rd, and I'm one of her speakers. So I hope you all will come and join us. But you do have to have that time. You have to carve out that time and I call it's the selfless me time. It's the time that you really need in order for you to be effective. And so that's what these Kingdom Marketplace connections are about. And as he was talking, I was sitting there because I've asked God, well, what is it about? You know, you told me to do this and I'm just doing it. What is it about? And I realized it's about us learning that it's more to just making money. Yeah. We know that God has given us the gift of the power to get wealth. We understand that. But do we understand that in the throes of the gift of the power to get wealth, he wants us to give him some time too. He wants us to carve out that time so that he can downpour in us and he can give us some fresh oil so then we can go back out there in order for us to operate in the gift of the power to get wealth. And so we just want to thank you, Mike, for coming on tonight and being with us. And again, I want to thank everybody who have come to be with us. But Mike, I do want to give you a gift. So if you could come back up and get your gift. You would like, gift? She give me a gift. But what I want to do is I want to gift you with my books. And I'll sign them. I'll sign them as well. And but I want to make sure that But I want to make sure that you have my book, Prayers for Success. And the Prayers for Success, it's a daily prayer every single day that you'll be able to read. And some days it'll help you when you want to like close yourself in the office and don't be bothered with anyone. But I wanted to make sure I gift you with my book.
Thank you so much.
I decided Prayers for Success for coming here. And like I said, he really switched his schedule because I figured Linda asked him. But I really thank you for switching your schedule. This was very awesome. And I thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And so make sure that if you have any prayer requests, they can be prayer requests, they can be spiritual, financial, whatever it is. Make sure you fill out your prayer requests because I pray over these every night. And so I want to make sure that I have your prayer requests. And in addition to that, make sure you interact with each other. Make sure that you're networking, that you're sharing information because that's what this is about as well. And also we want to thank Nine who allow us to come here and to do the Kingdom Marketplace Connection every third Thursday of the month. So we're excited about that. And I'm just excited. I really am. And I just want to say thank you all for coming. But just as we're getting ready to close out, just want to do a prayer. Father, we just thank you, God. We give honor and glory to you. You're such a wonderful God. You're such an awesome God. And we just love you with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind. Father, I thank you that once again that you have been in the midst at this Kingdom Marketplace Connection. Once again, Father, you sent the person and you gave them the words that we needed in order to take us into another realm and into another dimension of thought and of being. And Lord, I ask you to bless each and every person under the sound of my voice. I ask you to bless and keep them. Make your face shine upon them. Be gracious unto them, lift your countenance upon them, and give them your peace and your prosperity. I seal these prayers with your Holy Spirit, and I know it's done in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
And one more thing. Hi, I'm Lonnie, the owner. I want to tell everyone thank you for sowing a seed, because the Holy Spirit just told me a while back, those who sow a seed into this place will reap a harvest, a big harvest. Because this is for you guys. That was my prayer on June 13, 1998. What say people go? And Jackie, I want to thank you because you are bringing in these beautiful people, these successful people who's going to build up, add to God's kingdom. So thank you. I'll be on you every month. Okay, what we doing is that's right. Because we got to keep this going. We have to let the worldly people know God's people, we're very successful. Amen. But we're going to line up and do things God's way. Amen. So thank everyone for, when I say sow, let me buy some food. Buying some food. You sow the seed. Because God got someplace bigger and better for us. Yeah. So thank you. And I love everyone.
Thank you so much. I thank Lonnie that she opened her door up to us for us to come here every third Thursday. So with that being said, I want to thank you all again for coming. And hey, take a picture with me, and we can we'll just have a great time, and you all have a good evening. And be safe driving home. Oh yes. Oh yes, I forgot all about that. You know, for, between now and the end of the month, I am a coach, and Trina reminded me, because Trina has taken my coaching, and during now and the end of the month, I am doing a special. So make sure that you connect with me, so you can know, know exactly when I release the information. But and what I do, I coach emerging to small businesses. I also coach leaders, and I coach people, and everything I do with a holistic approach. So I tell people, I said, if you don't want the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit to be there, I'm not your coach. So definitely hook up with me if you want to go to the next level. You want to find out, as Mike said, what's my mission? Why am I here? You definitely want to hook up with me. You had a question?
Yes, what is your pricing for coaching and for the certification?
Well, that's why what you can do, go to my website, www.themeplace.org. Yeah, themeplace.org, and you can get a 30-minute complimentary coaching session.
Okay, so then I will get the prices after that.
Yep, because then, yep.
Okay.
And that's when I tell all what the prices are. But yeah, you can go there and you can get a complimentary coaching session at the Me Place, just like it sounds, themeplace.org.
I'm sorry, you were talking about earlier.